Thanks for tuning in, folks, and welcome back to Wham Talk 1600's Operating Theater. It's the only OR in all talk radio. I'm Dr. Dave Janda, broadcasting from our ancillary bunker, Lincoln Remain Freedom Bunker in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor. We're here every Sunday for you from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern live. And when that on-air red light goes off at 5 p.m. on Sundays, you don't have to wait 6 days and 21 hours for more of our fantastic content that puts you months, scratch that years, actually in several instances, decades ahead of that globalist constructed curve that ends in a brick wall with the shattering of your freedoms and your liberties. No, we are available 24/7 with extra shows, extra content, extra guests, extra analysis, archives to all of our shows at davejanda.com. Stop on by. You will not be disappointed, but you will be educated and thereby empowered. And all we ask is you take that information and you deliver it to the doorstep and the living rooms and the kitchens of your friends and families and neighbors and coworkers. Because the more people we have educated with the truth, the facts, the data, and when needed, the science, well, the sooner we end this reign of terror, and it is a reign of terror, by the globalist cult, the globalist syndicate, the New World Order crowd, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same. You see, folks, every week in our operating room, we dissect current events that are impacting you, your family, your business, our community, and our country. And we bring to our operating room information and guests the bought-off, lamestream, fake media either ignores because it doesn't fit into their preconceived, politically correct, bought-off agenda, because, folks, they're petrified. They're petrified of what might happen if they actually tell you what you need to know. You see, folks, this show and our platform, davejanda.com, is dedicated to your freedom, your political, your economic, your financial, and your health care freedom. A programming note in the 4 to 4:30 segment today, I am going to do a tribute, a discussion about our national championship football team, the University of Michigan Wolverine Team 144. But it's going to go a little deeper than people in the NCAA or Big Ten Conference or the SEC Conference or university administrators want me to go. And that's exactly what it's going to be about. It's about speaking truth to power. And just within the past, 45 minutes or so, the stellar quarterback for the University of Michigan Wolverines, J.J. McCarthy, announced that he will be entering the NFL draft. Well, the good news is J.J. leaves in his wake a tremendous group of folks to step in. And also congratulations to J.J. and his, now fiancée. Two big decisions by J.J. today. J.J.'s getting married. And JJ's going pro. And we wish both of them the best. And we know our football program has been left in great hands, not just on the field, but on the speaking to the truth to power front as well, which is what we're going to get into in that 4 to 4:30 hour. And speaking truth to power, and truth the syndicate does not want you to hear, is my first guest, someone who has been with us for many years. She speaks directly for your and every American and every person of the world's economic and financial freedom. Adriana Reed has been with the Camino Company, Camino, C-A-M-I-N-O, CaminoCompany.com since 2011 as a trader. She is one of the principals in the Camino Company and is one of the most knowledgeable and honest people on the financial front, and in particular in the precious metals arena. It is my honor to welcome back to the Operation Freedom Show and our platform, Adriana Reed. Adriana, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again, Dave.
So, Adriana, you and I have spoken extensively, much to the chagrin of those in, if you will, power. And we have spoken truth to that power for years, in particular about the Federal Reserve. So by way of foundation, Adriana, many of our listeners might already know that, but a refresher course is always welcome. And to our new listeners, and we have tens of thousands of new listeners around our country and frankly around the world through the internet every week, Adriana, educate our listeners about the Federal Reserve, because many people believe this Federal Reserve that deals with interest rates and money supply and creation of money supply, well, they're a group of government officials well, in fact, they're not part of the executive, legislative, or judicial branches of government. In fact, they're a group of bankers who only care about themselves and their industry. Adriana, educate all of us about the Federal Reserve, and then we're going to get into some issues as it relates to them that occurred this past week.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you and I both know, the Federal Reserve was started in 1913 under Woodrow Wilson, and it probably could make him the worst president in the United States because of what he did. Is he created in opposition to basically the Treasury. So the money supply does not answer to any American whatsoever, but all of the IRS and the Federal Reserve work against us in that sense, that they collect our taxes, they use our dollars, they raise interest rates, they do quantitative easing, quantitative tightening on the basis of what they think is best for the country. And as you and I have talked about extensively, like I said, they do not answer to anyone. We can't even audit them as a people. So as we see right now, we're currently in a state of extreme inflation, and they're still printing money and controlling the money supply, and on the basis that we have no idea what's actually going on with our own tax dollars or the printing of money and where that money is going.
So this group of independent bankers, a banking cartel that only care about themselves, since they came into power in 1913, as you outlined, the dollar's value, its ability to purchase goods and services has fallen by 99%. Now, Adriana, some people will say, well, boy, that was a terrible accident. Or wow, that's really incompetence. Well, in fact, Adriana, and tell me if I'm off, it's neither an accident nor incompetence that the dollar's purchasing power has lost 99% of its value since the criminal banking syndicate took control over its printing and distribution.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What we're seeing is by no fault of the American people, but it's also on purpose. And when you understand and work your ideologies on the basis that these things are intentional, then you can get ahead of them. And as I get older as well, I find that I don't find things are as by chance as we would think when we're younger in age. I probably should say that. That as I get older, I find that even economically speaking, everything that they've done since 1913 should probably get a second look, and then you can find the catalyst that they use to start the ball rolling so that they could say, oh, we're in a recession, oh, we're in a depression, which came right after the Federal Reserve was created. We saw the Great Depression. And as you saw, the Roaring '20s during that time, too. They had to create the euphoria, and the demise came right after. And we're kind of seeing that in some sense. I think it's very much mirroring that era, that we find that everything is intentional that's done in our society, and what's done to America as well.
Adriana, you mentioned that the Federal Reserve was launched under Woodrow Wilson, a globalist puppet of the highest order, as you mentioned. We did get a heads up from a prior president, a guy by the name of James Garfield, who said the following, quote, huge heads up, quote, whoever controls the volume of money in our country is absolute master of all industry and commerce. When you realize that the entire system is very easily controlled, one way or another, by a few powerful men at the top, you will not have to be told how periods of inflation and depression originate, end quote. Your take.
Probably a perfect warning, to be honest with you. And we have seen it over time, is that he who controls the money does have the power. And so that's what we find. The Federal Reserve has power over the American people. And the fact that, the decisions that they've made, especially since 2020, but I would even say back to 2008, we saw our debt increase heavily due to money printing, and we've seen inflation increase heavily as well. Since 2008, I would say things have gone on a very rapid pace to demise. But he has it spot on. The money supply and money control, it's very easy to create a situation where you can erase the middle class. You can impoverish people a lot faster, the people that are controlling the money, because they can control the ups and downs of society. And the elitists then can get away with murder in some sense. We're currently seeing it right now. I see a lot of suffering families in America as it is, and it's very much so caused by the money supply, because they can't afford to put food on the table. Mom and dad are getting second jobs. Mom's going to work and being pulled out of the house, so we don't see the nuclear family, as much as we used to see, and it's changing a lot of things. So what they're doing is, by controlling the money supply, they're controlling the trajectory of America as a society as well, our values and the things that we need in society, especially the middle class, in order to keep America as great as it's always been.
You mentioned the word murder. Interesting, because I gave you that quote from James Garfield. Mm-hmm. Soon after he made that quote mm-hmm. about the power of the criminal banking syndicate, he was in fact assassinated.
Yes.
And
we can also say the same thing happened to JFK.
Exactly. Well, good point, right? So JFK, one of the number of reasons the globalists wanted to get rid of him is, mm-hmm. and again, tell me if I'm off, he wanted to take back control of the money supply from the Federal Reserve and restore it back to the United States Treasury and back those dollars
yes.
with, in fact, silver, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, they couldn't have that, could they?
No.
Right? That blows apart their whole Ponzi scheme, doesn't it?
Exactly, yes.
So, Adriana, which brings us to this. As I mentioned in your introduction, you are a sub-specialist extraordinaire in precious metals. So, yes. Adriana, explain to all of us why the banking syndicate, although they accumulate huge amounts of physical gold, not paper, physical gold and physical silver for their own accounts, for their own coffers, for their own vaults, while all these huge companies, countries yeah. around the world accumulate huge amounts of gold and silver for their own vaults, Russia, China, Malaysia, Turkey, you name the country. Adriana, why don't the banksters, they're doing it for themselves, accumulating this physical gold. Why don't they want you, me, all the citizens, all the people in our country, around the world, to do the same?
It comes to probably one thing, and I would say it's control. It's a lot of, we live in a society where the elitists, it's very much so do as I say, not as I do. And that's very much what we're living in right now. If you look, the sovereign countries that are buying like crazy, they're backing their countries with gold. We see it heavily, Russia, China. Russia just started paying for oil in gold as we speak. It's happening right now. And we're seeing the de-dollarization of the entire world. The thing is if you're going to be the greatest country in the world, you have to know that people will constantly be shooting for you. And unless we stabilize our own country and understand what we're doing to our own dollar, especially when we take interest rates almost, when we saw during the pandemic, they almost went into negative interest rates at the rate they were going. They were telling people not to go to work, and then they were telling people, we'll give you all the money that you need. We'll just print it. Well, they were going through this rapid pace of de-dollarization and they were working with the elites, the Federal Reserve was, because they're the only people who can control our money supply. So what we saw during that time was, as Americans are very much asleep and are not aware that they should be buying gold and silver to back their own household, in my personal opinion, that if the country's not going to get on board with saving us, we need to save ourselves. And we see it with other countries and other businesses as well, backing themselves with gold and silver, because they understand what's coming down the line. Is they're thinking in the future, and we're thinking too much in the present right now.
So let's talk about the future, folks. We're discussing this issue, your financial freedom, with Adriana Reed from the Camino Company, CAMINO, CaminoCompany.com. Adriana, educate our listeners on separating themselves, if you will, from the pack, in protecting themselves with the best financial and insurance policy they could ever have, that being physical gold and physical silver, because all too often, every one of our listeners are told by their family, their friends, their, quote, stockbrokers that, oh, no, just stick with those paper assets. Stick with those stock certificates. Oh, that barbarous relics of gold and silver, you shouldn't do that. That's so difficult to buy. It's so difficult to sell. It's so difficult. Well, Adriana, you folks make it very simple, very transparent, which is very key, and very easy. Educate our listeners on where we are with the supply and the demand of gold and silver, and the steps in what people can do to ensure their financial freedom and stability.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can give us a call, or you can visit our website at CaminoCompany.com. You can give us a call at 800-348-8001. The process is much more simple than people, I think, or traders have a tendency to make it out to be. I think that they try to deter individuals from buying by saying, hey, it's a really hard process. You don't want to have to go through that. But it's not. Just make the phone call and we're going to take care of you. Once you give us a call, we go over your spending capability. Right now, I typically recommend for individuals who are just starting out to go 50-50. They should own some gold, some silver. The reason being is I think that the gold is going to be absolutely essential. This next year, I think that things are going to, continue to get worse and worse, unfortunately, for our country. And we're going to see some things kind of break out in the wrong sense, in the direction that we don't necessarily want it to go. So I recommend having gold. And then silver, I think, I think that there's projections for silver that, it could have a very good year this year, as well as, if we do switch over to a digital currency, or, we see our privacy being impacted by the control of the currency, silver is going to be an essential role for you and your household as well.
And what about supply demand? Because in times when there's stress in the system, the supplies get strained. Where are we there?
Yeah, so the supply, it depends on which item typically, but for the most part, supply is doing okay. We are seeing production has picked up heavily because demand is still very, very high for gold and silver. So I would say, though, there are delays on certain items, but for the most part, accessible across the board. On the flip side, I do find that we have our buyers, we have an increase in buyers heavily, and not very many people selling. Unfortunately, the people who are selling, I do find, are doing one of two things. They're going into another investment, or they're selling to cover, their monthly expenses, because, like I said, people are falling on hard times due to inflation.
And, at the end of this past week, Adriana, we saw gold and silver shoot up significantly in price. Several reasons for that. One, it was announced, kind of a nighttime announcement, that the United States racked up $500 billion in the last 3 months, right, of the year, number one. Number two, we had Middle East upheaval. Again, when things get rocky, it turns out that's when it jars people out of their slumber as it relates to precious metals. And all of a sudden, we start to see the prices move up significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. In all honesty, what we're seeing right now under this administration, and it's from head to toe, as you said, you call them the Republicrats, they're all working together, as far as I can see. And the issue that I have is none of these people are actually putting America first. I don't see the lives of Americans getting any better, but I do see our money leaving the country to fund everybody's wars. Like you said, in the middle of the night, I don't know if anybody else pays attention to how many bombings we've done in the past couple of weeks, and we've really ramped up war. In my opinion, when we see that, it means somebody needs to get paid. So we have to get those government contracts, those gun contracts going, start supplying things, get the money back in the politicians' hands. And that's when that's a major red flag for me as an individual, economically speaking, that it means down the pipeline there's going to be more to come as we speak. So you have that situation. Back home, though, we also can talk about the fact that inflation ticked back up, what they said to 3.4%, which means it probably ticked back up to 15%, as you and I both know. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with people who are not on the ground, and they're incredibly disconnected to the average American who has to live a day-to-day life in this country. And it's very disappointing to see, and I hope that people, truly wake up to the circumstances that in some ways we're kind of putting ourselves under by the way that we vote.
Adriana, I was contacted by a number of people this week who said, most of my assets are in my IRA.
Yeah.
And I've been told by my advisor who oversees my IRA that when I asked them about diversifying and having some financial insurance in my IRA, that being physical gold and silver, these folks were told that that wasn't possible, that it wasn't legal. Well, in fact, that's wrong, correct?
It's absolutely not true. It's 100% legal to own precious metals in your IRA, physical precious metals. I should be very clear. It's just that their company specifically probably does not do that. And the other thing, too, is we have to be very wary of going into physical precious metals and which companies you do work with. We want to make sure that we're protecting your IRA, not, giving another company profit for your IRA. So I do ask everybody, give me a call before you purchase with an IRA so I can help you out. My basis of morality is that honesty is always the number one answer, and the powers that be will provide if we live honestly. So with an IRA especially, please give me a call. I can set you up and get you started on getting your assets covered, especially for those, I do find those over the age of 60, you've worked most of your life, and I see what people have gone through, and I do believe that people should have the opportunity to retire and live out their life in peace, and I want to protect that as well. It's very important to me. My parents fall in that category and age range, so protecting that generation, I think it's essential at this point. So give me a call, and I can help you get set up with an IRA.
Adriana, is it an overstatement to say that if you are going to rely on folks within the financial industry solely for 100% of your advice, if you're going to rely on government officials 100% for your advice for your financial future, that is beyond hazardous to your financial welfare and health?
Absolutely, Dave. I think that in any industry or anything that we do, we should never have a one-sided mind, persuading us, pursuing us, talking to us, and then you take that one side. I think having as much knowledge as you can, talking to as many people as you can, and then coming to a realistic conclusion that works best for you is essential. I do think that, your broker has a place, in your life, but at the same time, I do find you do have to watch your back with quite a few of them.
Adriana, in our last minute and a half together, educate our listeners on how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can visit our website at www.caminocompany.com. You can purchase there 24/7. You can also give us a call at 800-348-8001. We're open 9 to 4:30 Pacific Standard Time. We're also open on Saturdays from 9 to 3. And you can also email me directly at adriana@caminocompany.com.
Adriana Reed, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do.